Earlier on today, we saw the best drivers in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series do battle at Indianapolis. Now, we go back to where it all begins in open wheel racing in America. The Skip Barber Formula 2000 at upstate New York, Watkins Glen International, are one of the fastest, trickiest circuits on the Skip Barber circuit. Williamson, along with Dan Blake, for this 150-minute race. And Dan, this track is fast, but don't be deceptive. The fact it's only got 7 corners, each of them has to be perfectly executed because there is so little margin between these drivers.
Indeed, Will, and also the fact that the cars carry the momentum through the corners. If you mess up one of the corners and you lose the momentum of the straights, you're going to find yourself losing about half a second, if not more. So definitely crucial. And also, I think drafting will play a major role, as we're seeing that the cars are qualifying at the moment, and quite a big train, some of them at the moment.
Indeed, yeah. Andre Borgi set the fastest time in practice, a 1 minute 22.935. Martin Kroenke, a 1 minute 23.057. Jorn Jens was in third, so pretty much Team Maestro ID locking out the front row. Right now in qualifying, it's Jean O'Day leading the way with a 1 minute 24.202. A number of drivers are yet to set their fast qualifying times. In fact, Andre Borcher is just coming past the straight right now, and it's going to be the start of his lap as he walks himself down into turn number 1. Martin Kroenke on the racetrack is working himself up the hill right now. Jorn Jens also working himself up the hill, not that far behind Kroenke. And Paul Grillo is right now in about the same position. Alexander Trowbridge working himself down towards the final corner of the racetrack. But we're going to go on board with Andre Borcher in that number 36 car. And Borcher's had good speed all practice session, Dan.
Yeah, Andre Borcher and the My3ID drivers having good speed. But at the moment, Andre Borcher just seems to not have much of a draft at the moment. So if he wants to get high up in the qualifying positions, you need to find a drafting buddy in pretty quickly, because they've got about half the session left to go. Got about 6 minutes to go out of the 10-minute session. And Andre Borcher currently in 20th position with a 1 minute 32.7. He's pulling over on the side of the track now. So, and in fact, I think he's aborted that run.
He has indeed, so he's going to bring that car down to pit road, come out for another run. 10-minute qualifying session, we're 4.5 minutes into that, so approaching half distance. And Martin Kroenke to the top of the standings right now for 1 minute 23.203. And he's coming past the start finish line. This looks like it might be a faster lap for him as well. He's got a bit of a toe to come past the stripe. Let's see what he can do this time by. 124.898, so not fast this time by. However, he can get that run up the hill. In fact, he's going to be into a little bit of traffic. And he's going to have to find a way past this car. They're going to be 3 wide as they come down into turn number 2. This is going to be interesting. Kroenke down to the inside. He will complete that pass. And Dan, he's got that draft up the hill, which is going to help him as well.
Very important, especially up the hill, because it'll help him get the momentum. But also, another driver who's quite high up, he's no stranger to this, is Jan Niezolowski, our Premier Series winner from last year. He currently finds himself in the top 5. And also Miko Nassi, a World Tour victory, someone who's winning the World Tour in the Indy cars, finds himself in the top 5 as well. So a very high calibre of field out here today.
So qualifying standings as they stand, Martin Kroenke, 1 minute 23.204, goes tremendously wide. I think he's going to slow down and abort that lap, fall back into line and try and get himself another run. Even Bevan is about 4 tenths of a second behind him. Currently, right now, he's got in the 2nd position provisionally in qualifying. In 3rd place, you have Jorn Jens, 4th, Miko Nassi, 5th is Jean Niezolowski, then Kevin Vaughan and Andrew Talbridge. McCormick, Jensen and Hizzy, they are your top 10 right now. And that's that thing. All of these drivers are going to want to find a way to get a bit of a draft. But what that does mean, no one wants to be the car pulling everyone else around the racetrack, because they know that if they do that, there's a chance that all these guys behind them on the racetrack are going to leapfrog them in the standings.
That's exactly what happens, because they have no one to draft them, but they're effectively the leader of the train, so all the cars behind them get the benefit. So I've seen quite a few cars who seem to have trains behind them pulling out and aborting their own laps and trying to fall to the back of the trains to get the other advantage. So a lot of tactical play coming into this qualifying session with about 3.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, 3.5 minutes left on the play clock. Kawaka Connor now has got himself a bit of a good draft. He's currently scored in the 17th position in qualifying. He's got a car ahead of him. He's just going to pull to the outside of him. They're going to be 2 wide to come down into the carousel. Don't forget, this is a 7-corner racetrack, a little under 2.5 miles here. And Marco Cornwall just gets breed past. I believe that is by one of the 3ID guys. That is so close there. Two of them going past him. And that was Martin Kroenke and Andre Borcher both going past. Kroenke aborts his lap. Borcher does look as though he got a clean pass there. He is going to slow down to allow O'Connell to go back past him and try and get another run, however. And the My 3D guys, you have to say, pretty much have been just drafting everyone this entire qualifying session. Kroenke's got a good lap in. He's 2 times per second faster than Miko Nassi. Borcher, however, hasn't got a decent lap in, you have to argue, just yet. And in qualifying, he is scored, well, pretty much 38th position. That's not where he wants to be.
Probably only have time for 1 or 2 laps at the most, so if he's going to make it count now, he has to do it now. And there's a car he's drafting in front now. I think that's his teammate. Is that Johan Jens, his teammate in front of him, or he's drafting somebody? And in fact, no, it's Mark O'Connell who he's drafting. So Andre Bocher is drafting with the 18th place car, Mark O'Connell. It'll be interesting to see Mark O'Connell, not one of the fastest drivers, just how much Andre Bocher can gain from him.
And also, from the testing that I've done here, actually, you can be a little bit better if you actually are stuck behind a car coming up the hill, because you have to get out the gas just a tiny bit, and if you do that, there is a chance, if you're running by yourself, that car wants to snap out on you a little bit. Andre Borcher splits 2 cars now, one on the left, one on the right, as he comes down into the car itself. There's not going to be any drive for him in the second half of this lap. It's going to be interesting to see whether he just uses this lap to try and improve his qualifying time. Big crash behind him, however, and this as well. But you have these huge draft pack. It's almost like Talladega in the Carburetor Cup, Dan, because eventually everyone's just going to crash into each other.
Yeah, it's one of the dangers. It is a bit like super speedway driving, where one mistake and you can take a whole lot of cars out. So in the race, that would definitely be something they're going to have to be careful of, because one mistake could take out 5, 6, maybe even more drivers in one sweep.
Andre Borcher comes past the start-finish line. What is it going to be for him as he comes past the stripe? And he moves himself up into 7th position, a 123.599. Does show the big difference between having a draft on that long back straightaway and not having a draft, though, Dan. And he lost that 2 times per second between himself and the cars ahead of him. That's where he lost it. Simply not having a dance partner.
Quite happy with the 7th place, I would think. There, it's a lot better than he was, but exactly that's what we trying to say. You definitely need a dancing partner, such a draft partner, and Andre Bocher could have been a lot further up if he had somebody, but I think 7th place in a race like this isn't too bad of a place to be in. But not long now, we've got less than 30 seconds to go, and it looks like the top 3 are going to be Martin Kroenke, Jan Niezolowski and Miko Nassi.
Niezolowski, he is very close to actually beating the clock and having 1 more lap to go. Currently scored 2nd position on qualifying order with a time of 1 minute 23.466, which he set last time by. He has got a car ahead of him. He might just about beat the clock. The time is up. He doesn't get it. He misses out by about 3 seconds there. Car ahead of him doesn't as well. So Niezolowski will not be able to do this lap. He's going to have to drive that car back down to pit road. In fact, he's going to pull it off on the entry to turn number 1. Very close though for Niezolowski. And arguably, he actually had a chop there of pole position.
Yeah, he would have had a shot of pole position if he'd had that extra lap, but it's interesting to see how costly that's going to be for him, how far he drops from 2nd place, because there are some quick drivers still out there drafting, so see how much it changes in the last lap of the qualifying.
Don't forget, keep in contact with us on Twitter. Use the hashtag iRacingSkip. Alternatively, you can follow us at GlacierTV. On Facebook.com, go to Facebook.com/GlacierTV. To stay in touch with us on there. On YouTube, it's youtube.com/GlacierTV archive. Pretty much find every single video we've ever had, including the 2012 iRacing.com Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series as well. To all of you people as well who are new to iRacing, don't forget, if you head over to iRacing.com right now, you can get yourself half price off your first free membership. Promo code on iRacing.com. Take it out right now, and we're going to start looking through your qualifying order. First 2 rows, Martin Kroenke from Jan Niezolowski. They are your top 2 drivers. Miko Nassi and Ian Bevan, they are in row number 2. And then you have David Hasey and Johan Jens in row 3. Andre Borcher in 7th position. Paul Grillo in 8th. Dominic Brunin in 9th. And then Kevin Vaughan running out your top 10, Dan.
11th position, we got Brendan O'Brien. And 12th is Alexander Trowbridge. 13th, we have Richard Torp Jensen. 14th is Thiago C. Almeida. In 15th place is Timothy Hopper. 16th we have Mike McCormick. 17th is Richard Avery with Philip Stam alongside him at 18th. 19th is Kevin McDonald Jr. 20th is Steve Souls. Then in 21st position we have Pascal Tennyson. 22nd is Mark O'Connell. 23rd place is John O'Day, our early pole sitter. 24th is Edward Cavalier. 25th is Latko Nisevic. 26th will be Chris Martin. 27th, Bobby West. 28th is Jan Makats. 29th, John Unsby. And in 30th place is Radu Rahamdri.
A total of 42 cars making that trip over to Watkins Glen International here today. In 31st position, Christian Manzini. 32nd, Glenn Chowder. Pierre Bondard. Jesse Pectua. Peter Joyce, Michael Carr, Henry Attila, Marcus Wilson, John Gilmore, Marcus Instonen, Jan Drix, and David Poles. They are your 42 drivers as the cars run themselves out to the grid. Martin Kroenke starting this race from pole position from Jan Nisolowski, Miko Nassi in the third spot, in Bevan in fourth, and David Heasy rounds out your top five. A standing start here at Watkins Glen International, running on the classic layout, which is just a little under 2.5 miles in length. If you want to know how fast 2.5 miles can go, in Lapis Motor Speedway they do laps at about 40 seconds. Here we're doing lap times of 1 minute 23.0. However, don't underestimate that in any way, shape or form, because at Indy they're flat out. Here they've got to negotiate some very tricky corners. Lights out any moment now, and we are racing here. 50 minutes on the clock, and it's a good start there by Nisolowski. He's immediately going to try and go to the outside there of Martin Kroenke. As they come down into turn one for the first time, they're going to be side by side. In third position, Nassi gets a good start as well, but Kroenke maintains that second position for the time being. Miko Nassi looks as though he's going to try and slot down the inside of Nisolowski there as they come down into turn number two. They're going to be side by side as they come up on the hill, and it does look as though that Nassi is going to get the job done there on Nisolowski, and we're having a look to see if everyone got through turn number one okay. Looks like there was a couple of drivers involved in incident down, but for the most part, everyone is okay.
Yeah, most part everyone was okay. So one spinner coming out turn one, but that's very unfortunate for Ian Bevan, number 69. He was meant to start in fourth place. He had disconnection and he couldn't get back in time to take the start. So all that qualifying effort for him went for nothing. But frantic stuff, nearly 3 wide going into the carousel on lap one.
Yeah, and you've got Nisolowski now relegated down into the fourth position. The draft really comes into effect at that part of the racetrack. Miko Nassi is in third. Ahead of him now is David Heisey, who started this race in fifth, now running in the second position on the racetrack and actually hunting down Martin Kroenke as well in the battle for the race lead. But Nisolowski is down in the third position. Andre Borch has been able to get past Miko Nassi now, so Nassi's falling all the way down from second down to fifth position on the racetrack. We have a crash on the racetrack. We're going to get confirmation of who that is momentarily. And I see a car, blue and red car actually, and that is Radu Rahimdri. It looks like that 32 car is going to be out of the race, Dan.
Yeah, very unfortunate, but with a field so big, there is always a chance that there's going to be people a bit of cramped space, especially when they're drafting and going 2 or 3 wide. Just a slight little mistake. That's all it's going to take for someone to have an off, and unfortunately, it looks like that's happened on this first lap.
So, your top 5 after lap number 1, it is Martin Kroenke from David Hasey, and Nisolowski third, Andre Borcher fourth, and Miko Nassi rounds out your top 5. However, that's all going to change as they work themselves up the hill, down towards the carousel once again. You see already Andre Borcher's moving himself to the right-hand side. They're going to try and go 3 wide down into the carousel. You've got Jan Nisolowski down in the middle of the racetrack, and Nisolowski's going to complete that pass. He's going to have the advantage as he come down into turn number 2. In fact, is he going to try and go past Martin Kroenke as well? There's a good chance that Jan Nisolowski has just put himself into the race lead. Andre Borcher side by side with Martin Kroenke. Nisolowski, 3 positions in 1 corner. Martin Kroenke is trying to come back there, but he didn't have the draft. That means that it is right now Jan Nisolowski leading the way. Andre Borcher second, and Martin Kroenke rounds out your top 3.
Yeah, Premier Series winner there with a fantastic move. It just shows the power of the draft. He managed to get past 2 cars there. Fantastic driving from Nisolowski, but now he's got his mirrors full of these My3ID drivers of Martin Kroenke and Andre Bocher, the drivers from the iRacing World Grand Prix Series. So they're certainly experienced. I think this will be a very good battle, but it's not just them. It's about 10 cars in a second and a half. Fantastic racing here at Watkins Glen.
Couple of drivers on pit road. You have Jan, I'll take that back. You had Pierre Bondard just come out of pit road, as did Jan Derricks, and they're right in the path right now of Andre Borcher, Jan Nisolowski, and Martin Kroenke as they work themselves up the hill. In fact, this will help Jan Nisolowski this time because he will get a draw from Pierre Bondon in that number 92 car. Pierre Bondon, of course, iRacing IndyCar driver, so he knows himself on both the road courses and on the ovals. He moves himself to the outside of the racetrack. He says he's going to give the position up down into the carousel, but you see Nisolowski is already under attack there from the number 1 car as he comes onto the inside, down into the carousel. He will complete the passing. We're 3 wide at some point. No issue for these drivers. These cars are very, very narrow, of course. Don't forget that. And the number 1 machine looks as though he's going to put himself back into position. Andre Borcher, I'll take that back, because the 36 car there is moved up into the first position, but they're still going to be 2 wide, so they come down into the second to last corner. And Martin Kroenke still holding on there in the number 6 car as well. And we have ourselves, I'd say, a 3-car breakaway. Grant Hughes there in the 4th position is still there, but it looks like he's losing a couple of attempts on the second lap, Dan.
Yeah, Pierre Bourdon back into the pits, but Andrzej Bocher took the lead back from Jan Nisolowski, and also Martin Kroenke's found a way past as well. So Jan Nisolowski back down into 3rd position, but we got David Hussey, Mikko Nassi, Jorn Jens, all very close together. They're all in one big train, and we got to feel that on the last lap you might not be the best to be in the lead, because as we see with the draft, they're just going to end up going past. So it's going to be interesting to see on the last lap. We've got plenty of time before then, but Martin Kroenke right on the back bumper, well, not back bumper, on the rear wing of his teammate Andrzej Bocher. So he'll be trying to make a move here for the lead. So it's Andrzej Bocher currently leading, but Martin Kroenke on the attack.
It looks as though we're going to have a battle for the race lead once again. Nisolowski's going to pop it down to the inside and see if he can get himself past Borcher and Martin Kroenke. Kroenke did consider going past Borcher. That might have cost him the chance to have the race lead for this lap, because Nisolowski is back to the point now. As Nisolowski, I have to say, he's very good down into the carousel in that number 8 car. Turning our attention down to the mid-pack very quickly, all the way from about 10th position on the racetrack through to about, what, 17th, 18th almost? It starts off with Brandon O'Brien. In fact, he's going to try and go past a couple of drivers as he comes down into the second to last corner. On the outside there is Philip Stam. He's going to use a lot of that curb there, or have the inside line down to the final corner. And this is a battle from about, say, 10 through to about 17 positions on the racetrack. Philip Stam, that last lap, gained 3 positions, and a lot of that is down to where you catch the draft down.
Yeah, especially on the going up the hill onto the straight is a good point to get the draft. But all through this field, there's a fierce lot of battling, and now coming into turn 1, there's a big group of them, and they all just about get through. There's almost a bit of contact there, but somehow they all survive, and they go to carry on to fight for another day.
Indeed, and this mid-pack as well, it does show just how little difference there is between these tribes. You have a look at qualifying, it was 2 seconds from first to last position on the racetrack. And these guys right now on Racestream as well, of course, if their car doesn't handle as well in clean air, then they'll fall back eventually once these packs spread out. But in the draft, you can see that these guys are very evenly matched, Dan.
Yeah, they're coming down the straight now, 3 wide. They're definitely very well matched, which is making for great racing. This is like Formula Ford racing as such, where they were very close and competitive, but the 3 wide just about make it through the corner. But there's fighting all over the track. It's very hard to think where to look next, because there's so much going on at the moment, and we've only had 5 minutes, so we've got about 44 to go.
So Nisolowski still was the race leader at the end of the last lap, but he has been passed once again by Martin Kroenke, who leads the race as he comes past the start-finish line. Andre Borcher in the 2nd position, Jan Nisolowski in 3rd, David Hussey in 4th, and then Mikko Nassi rounds out your top 5. Then it is Sergio Almeida from Jorn Jens. In fact, Jorn Jens is going to try and complete that pass as they come down into turn number 1 over Almeida once again. Will he get that job done? Yes, he will. So move him back up into the 6th position for the time being. And there's a lot of passing opportunities here as well, Dad. You've got turn 1 down at the carousel and also into the second to last corner.
This is one of the tracks, one of the very few tracks where passing is almost available at every single corner, even the S's if you're very, very brave. But there's very good racing lines on all these corners, really. There's not a single corner here where you can't really make a manoeuvre, in my opinion. So you can see a lot of overtaking at any given point in the track, but it seems like the top 9 are split up from the rest of the field, and then there's a bit of a gap back to the battle from 9th all the way down to probably about 28th position. So we're running 2 trains, it seems, at the moment, but all of them are so close at the moment. It's just fantastic racing, as I said before.
And that battle up front between Nisolowski and Borcher and Kroenke, that continues lap and lap as well, and it does look as though that none of those three drivers has the clear advantage. They need to work with each other. And Nikolowski, he's at a disadvantage in that
Bocher's
respect
on the
because of the
grass.
fact.
He's gone a bit wide. He's going out of turn number 6. He's just about going to keep it on the track and keep his position there. But Andrzej Bocher onto the grass. Very lucky there to keep it under control and to not lose any positions. Just shows there one little small mistake and Bocher nearly lost a position. But everyone in that pack seems to be as they were before.
Yeah, and that kind of sums up the point that I was just about to
And there's
make.
a spinner there. It's a car, I think, of Mikko Nassi, who's been turned around. Yes, it is Mikko Nassi in turn 1. And the other car involved is Kevin Vaughan. So Mikko Nassi and Kevin Vaughan have unfortunately. And that's caused a second impact behind. And there's cars all over the track. There's 2 on the inside. So we took break before about not being many incidents. But that incident between Kevin Vaughan and Mikko Nassi going into turn 1, I've seen a secondary impact. I think we're going to lose about 3 or 4 cars there.
Yeah, and that's disappointing because Nassi especially was looking strong for at least top 10 finish, knocking on the door of the top 5 as well. But Bolcher, what happened to him puts him right down just for the time being. Here's managed to gain it back up there, and he used to work on Nikolowski, who in turn is trying to get past Martin Kroenke. I was about to say that as well, that the two My3AD drivers had the chance to work together out front on those last couple of laps to try and hold off Nikolowski. Does look as though Nikolowski is good at all parts of this racetrack, and also David Heisey's come back into battle as well, as has Jorn Jens, and the top 5 right now separated by less than 1 second on the racetrack, Dan.
Yeah, David Heisey is a driver who hasn't really made many moves. He's been quite content to stick behind them and watch what's going on, but now it's got Jorn Jens right behind him. The other bad thing about that little incident is that we've reduced our main train to about 7 or 8 cars now. We did have a bit more than that, and it's down to that. So that's another. But as I said before, David Heisey at the moment has been content to stay behind, but I think we might have to see him getting a bit more racy because the top 3 are trying to make a breakaway, but with the draft system, I don't think they will. But Jorn Jens, the other My3AD driver, is keen to join his teammates, and I don't think it'll be too long before he tries to make a move on Heisey.
Indeed, I think that's completely the case right now as we're working ourselves down onto lap number 8 here. Of course, this is a time race. We've just worked ourselves close to the 13-minute mark in this race out of 15 minutes. And that lead pack that you're talking about, the fact it has slowed down, that will only help those top 2 drivers out front in many ways. However, the guys running in 5th and 6th position who have nothing to lose in this race, Dan, there is a chance now that there's no one behind them. They can just go gang-ho to try and get to the front. And I think that anyone still in the top 10 of this race, realistically, has a chance of causing an upset at the very least.
Yeah, definitely, because also accidents and all that, and as we saw before, we said about Jorn Jens, and Jorn Jens has taken that 4th position from David Heisey, but up front, at the moment, it's Martin Kroenke leading Jan Nikolowski in 2nd place, and now Jorn Jens, having just gone past the car of David Heisey, is going to try and make an impression on his teammate Andrzej Bocher, so Jorn Jens is starting to get a bit more racier, but those top 7 are separated by less than 2 seconds. And as we said before, those 7, I think it's going to be one of those who take victory unless there's an incident, of course, in which case more drivers could get involved. But at the moment, it looks like these 7 are starting to pull away from the rest of the field quite comprehensively.
You talk about incidents, we're just going to run through the drivers who have been involved in incidents so far in this race. You have Kevin McDonald out the race, Pierre Bourdais scored 1 lap down, Jan Dirk scored 1 lap down, and Michael Carr scored 1 lap down as well. A total of 37 cars scored for the time being on the lead lap. None of them looking as though they will put themselves down a lap within the next 5 to 10 laps or so. But it's going to be too wide down as they come into the carousel this time by. This is Martin Kroenke, who has on his outside Andrzej Bocher. Jorn Jens almost got that race lead away. Just went a little bit wide down to the carousel, however, Dan.
And going wide is going to cost him quite a few positions there, because not only has he lost out, he was alongside going for the lead, and now also you got the car there of Thiago Almeida trying to get past him on his inside, and I think Almeida will just make second. There's a spin there for Jan Nikolowski, and he's taken out one of the cars with him. That's Thiago Almeida. Very unfortunate there, but it just shows what happens with one tiny mistake. And when you're running that close, you don't just take yourself, you can take others as well. That's very disappointing for Jan Nikolowski, and that is really, really unfortunate, because that's one of our main runners for this race, seemingly out the race. There's some suspension damage there, so I think that'll be his day done, unfortunately.
And that's one of the things that we talk about at this racetrack. Yes, it looks simple on paper. In reality, each corner is differently banked per se, and that means that these guys have to get an idea of how each car works at each racetrack throughout the course of a run, And that's one of those things I think a lot of guys didn't spend as much attention on, really.
Yeah, we saw Jan Zalowski just got loose coming into turn 6, and unfortunately it snapped on him. But at the moment we've got my 3ID 1, 2, 3, and Andre Bocher has now dropped back into third place because Jorn Jens has gone past. But the other two cars involved in that front five are David Husey and a man we haven't really talked much about so far, Alexander Trowbridge, in 5th position. But those five at the moment seem to have broken away. But every time there's an incident, it means that the cars available in this front pack dwindles lap by lap down to 5 at the front at the moment. But it looks like it's currently my 3ID at 1, 2, 3.
Interesting for Team Maestro AD leading the way in the standings, and in many ways that's exactly what we expected them to do. The fact being they have worked as a team since the qualifying session started, the practice session started, and the race itself. They worked together in harmony to try and get themselves to the top 3 and find a way dominating the race from there. To run through your top 10 right now, it is Kroenke from Jens and Borcher from Heisey from Talbridge, Meerkat, Stam, McCormick, Cavalier and Antilla. They are your top 10, and that race lead is not going to go away. However, those top 5 drivers now have a 7-second gap at least over the guy in the sixth position, which is Mike McCormack. Those top 5 drivers in a completely different league from everyone else around them.
Yeah, it seems that they just all seem to have pulled clear, and then it's just those drivers going for contention for the victory, 5 cars. But the My 3ID drivers will certainly make it a bit more entertaining for each other. And just looking back now at the incident with Jan Zalowski, and the fact he didn't go wide, what happened was he had a bit of a tap in the rear end there from Andre Bocher. So I said before, Zalowski may have gone a bit loose. My apologies. It turns out there was a little bit of help there from Andre Bocher, which unfortunately sent him round. But unfortunately, what's come from that is the fact that we've lost from this race Jan Zalowski, which is very, very unfortunate. But as the cars now come to the end of the 11th lap, it is at the moment we have Jorn Jens in the lead with Andre Bocher with 2nd place. Third is Martin Kroenke, but David Heisey is hanging on 1 and 4th place. With Alexander Trowbridge starting to fall back just a little bit there in the 5th position. But after that, we got a nice little battle behind. We've got the 4 cars. One of them is Jan Merkatz, Mark McCormick. We've got Philip Stam as well, and those 3 drivers also it's just those 3 drivers, and after that there's a bit of a gap back, 7 seconds to Glenn Schauder and Harry Antilla. So the top 10 are now separated by 18-19 seconds, when before they were very close. It just shows how much of a spread there is even with the draft at the moment. As they come down the back straight, it is Jorn Jens leading. We got Andre Bocher and Martin Kroenke going 3 wide, a bit of my 3ID 3 wide. But at the moment, Jens on the inside, he's on the middle, but it's going to be Martin Kroenke taking the lead on the outside. Andre Bocher will try and get past Jorn Jens as well, but at the moment he's unsuccessful, and Jorn Jens has the advantage going into turn 6. He has the inside line. David Heisey in 4th hanging on, but Alexander Trowbridge lap after lap seems to be dropping that a little bit further back, and he's in a no man's land at the moment. As they come into turn 6, Jorn Jens has the inside line and will defend and keep his 2nd position from Andre Bocher, his teammate. I don't think these drivers will be fighting as hard amongst themselves as it was other drivers, but later on you can definitely see that the gloves may come off. Jorn Jens very close there to hitting that tyre stack at the edge of turn 7, the last corner. That is one of the dangers of that corner. You catch it just a little bit wrong, you can catch it, and then these single-seater cars, you don't want to be doing that because that will send you into some severe damage.
Indeed, yeah, and these guys, they have to drive on the ragged edge at this racetrack, especially as they come up the hill through turn number 2, 3, 4, Dan, that you've got to be so careful, because you have got to pretty much lift off the gas a tiny bit to get that car to turn, then get back on it for turn 5. And it is so easy when you stamp on that gas pedal again, the car to step around from you. Your race is going to be done because the Armco barriers are so close to the edge of the track here.
Bit like Monaco in a way, but there's a big battle here for position for 6th and 7th between Jan Merkatz and Mike McCormick. They've been side by side nearly through the S's. They're lucky they didn't go side by side through the S's, but the car on the inside is going to try and keep the position, but it just seems that the run that the other cars got on him is going to keep the position. It's Merkatz currently in 7th position and McCormick in 6th, but also in that little, we've got another guy with cars, is Philip Stam as well. So In fact, I think it's Philip Stam who was challenging. My apologies. No, Philip Stam is the third one in that. My apologies. But the battle was hotting up between Mercatz and Mike McCormick, and that's a battle for 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Yeah, McCormick's going to try the outside line as well. It's come down to the second to last corner. He's not going to need to get the line there, and that's going to hurt his chance to try and go down the inside, down into the final corner of the racetrack, which of course leads into a right-hander for turn number 1 as well. So if you can try and at least set up the pass there, makes it a very interesting run down the long front straightaway. We're approaching half race distance now in this race. About 20 minutes of this race scored complete. Having a look down the field a little bit, these battles in the mid-pack really do continue, especially down at about 15th position still on the racetrack. You've got, I'll take that back, it's Edgar Cavalier in 14th position, as Bobby West comes onto pit road actually. And also I believe that John Unsby is on the pit road, so a couple of guys making a stop early on here, Dan.
Yeah, this race has a mandatory pit stop, and also something which I'd forgotten is each driver has got 2 free toes. So for someone like Jan Nisolowski, who was involved in that earlier incident, he's 53 seconds back at the moment in 23rd position. But the fact he had the free toe means that he's able to get a new car. Basically, he's jumped out of his old one, got in the new one, and he's now able to keep on going. He's in 20th position. I think he still has a compulsory pit stop to make, but it's just a little something to make this race a bit more dynamic. The fact that they have got free toes, and also the mandatory pit stop makes even further strategy into the race. But it's currently still the 3 MyID drivers, with David Hoosey doing well to keep on the back of them at the moment, and that's positions 1 to 4.
Yeah, and that mandatory pit stop will be a big difference maker. Of course, we saw this in the World Championship Series early on as well, Dan. If you can get the later you can go into the race, the less fuel you need to take. It's a little bit of a less gap here in the Skip Barber compared to the Formula 1 machine. But still, if you can go 5 laps longer, there's potentially a second extra you can save on fuel, which a second could be a huge difference maker for leaping cars around here.
Yeah, as you said before, Will, we've got these 4 cars for lead separated by 0.7 of a second. So if your logic is right there and it's about a second, then that's the difference between 4 or 5 positions, which is actually quite massive. So the quicker they can get it done, the better, as far as the pit stops goes. And these 4 at the front continue to entertain us, swapping positions round nearly every corner.
Yeah, every corner, pretty much they are doing it. Right now, it's Martin Kroenke trying to work himself over Jorn Jens, who was called as your race leader just for the time being. Martin Kroenke goes back past him, and it looks as though that perhaps Andre Borch will try and go past as well. But Jorn Jens back again on the attack as they come down into the second to last corner. Jens is going to try and take that race lead away. If he can get it into this corner, there's a chance he could lead the lap. Jorn Jens, a nice run down into turn number 7, and it looks as though Jens is just going to be able to keep it, but Kroenke all over the rear of him, and that draft from Kroenke looks very, very impressive.
And David Heitze comes down the pit lane to take his compulsory pit stop, so in a 4th position behind the 3 MyID cars, has decided now is his best opportunity to go into the pits.
Yeah, and he started that race in he was running the 4th position for a lot of the time, and he might have just tried to take the early pit stop to make up track position. From a strategy point of view, there's a chance he can make it work, but he has to make sure he comes out into clean air now. And this track is starting to spread out, so clean air doesn't mean as much as it did if you start this race, try and go onto an alternate strategy on lap number 2.
No, definitely, because on the early stages of the lap where everyone was still together, drafting was the best policy, but if he can get some clean air, it might help him. But you've got to think that these My3ID drivers drafting each other probably will be a bit quicker, even if they're fighting each other, but we'll see what happens as the race develops.
Yeah, how much they're going to have in the proportion of team orders, I don't quite know, but these guys for the moment are being allowed to pretty much race each other as long or as hard as he wants to on the racetrack over their competitors. For Jorn Jens, however, he's sat in that 3rd position, but he can very easily get back to that race lead, Dan. We've seen it happen in the case of just 1 straightaway.
Yeah, exactly. You can get the run, catch the draft going down the straight, and by the time they get to the chute, you can either be on the outside or you can be in the lead challenging. So it just shows that the draft has just a speed difference. It's almost like having DRS on these cars to an extent. The fact that they can go from 3rd to 1st, just like that. So as we come to the closing stages of the race, I think that will definitely play a factor in our final result.
And the level of fuel you take on your pit stop, that's going to be so critical as well. These cars, despite the fact they're a lot slower than the Star Masters, the IndyCar, and the Williams FW31, every little bit of fuel makes a big difference still.
and it also makes your pit stop a lot less as well. If they've got to take less fuel than David Heisey, the guy who was in fourth position, they will have to take less because they've gone a lot longer. That means they'll save time also in the pits. So be interesting just to see how that one pans out. But at the moment, these three are going line of stern. They don't seem to be fighting as much as they were before this lap. We haven't seen any overtaking manoeuvres, so I think this may be they're trying to break away from David Heisey in fourth position by keeping it close at the moment.
Yeah, they've done a good job actually of trying to break away from that lead pack. We talked about it earlier on. That gap is now up to 17 seconds on the racetrack. 17 seconds on a track like this is a huge amount, Dan. Especially when you consider we're only working ourselves on lap number 17, so second a lap. We are just past the halfway distance right now.
Yeah, phenomenal. But these cars leaders are going to come across traffic pretty shortly as well. I've seen about 3 or 4 fellow competitors in front of them. So going through the traffic is another thing that can affect the race. With the if they get caught into trouble with traffic, that can spell disaster. We've seen it before many times before, where the leaders come across the lap cars, and sometimes they can lose time or even worse, lose their race due to them. I can't see him not having on my screen. He has a front wing, but I don't know if that is correct. Yeah, he came in for the new car, so if he's lost his front wing, I don't think he has lost his front wing on my screen anyway. But Dan is allowed to get up to 13th position following that earlier incident, so he's coming out the field quite rapidly.
And he has had to work for it. But he's going to try carrying it on as this race progresses. As I say, just past the halfway distance here, Martin Kroenke still leads away from Andre Borcher, Jorn Jens. You couldn't put a blanket over these three drivers. Philip Stan is 18.3 seconds back in the fourth position. And then you have Alexander Talbridge. They round out your top five. All these drivers down, they have to make a mandatory pit stop. When they do that, however, it's down to them. And it could be that case that they're going to go as late as possible, try and cover every eventuality.
Yeah, the lighter they are, the less time they got to stop. Also in the pits, interestingly, that battle for fourth position has changed hands because Alexander Trowbridge has come out in front of David Heisey, and they were quite close together when they came in. So Trowbridge has been able to take Heisey to take fourth place, and net aggregate fourth place when all the pit stops have finished through.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on pit stops as this race progresses. We'll keep an eye, say, down on pit road. Having a look down the field just a little bit, an interesting battle going on, and this is all the way outside the top 10, which is why unfortunately we haven't talked about it that much, but it's the likes of Nico Nassi right now, John Understreet, Harry Antila, Jan Chandler. They're all battling for positions pretty much we're just outside the top 20 for some of them barely scraping into the top 20, people like Nico Nassi and John Unsbury.
Nico Nassi is another one who's trying to recover from an early race, and I think there might have been I've seen some contact behind there. Not Harry and Taylor just about escaped it. I thought there's going to be contact there, but Nico Nassi is someone who I said before has been involved in an earlier incident trying to recover some room. But all down the field there's some quite fierce battling, and we've got cars coming into the pit lane even still to make their compulsory pit stops. And I just wonder how long these My 3ID drivers are going to stay out for, because every lap that they're staying out there for means they have to spend less time in the pits getting fuel to see them through to the end.
And we know that Team MyFreeD have worked on their fuel mileage, not only in the World Championship Grand Prix series, but in other series as well. They say they came up with a breakthrough a couple of weeks ago, the week before the Young Drivers Test, which would have helped them completely. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating for that, and they're going to have to try that out, not only in labs, but in museums and everyone else as well, to make sure that people aren't decepted or fooled by it. Let's turn our attention back to Martin Kroenke, shall we? Because he's got himself Andre Borcher still about 2 car lengths behind him, and Borcher is all over the rear of him. Looks like he's actually trying to give Kroenke a bit of a bump draft down the back straightaway, and Jorn Jens is still stuck there in the third position, just 2 tenths of a second back.
Bump drafting is something which I would be a bit wary of, but as I said before, they're starting to come out to a very big pack of slower cars, and the slower cars are racing amongst themselves. So the awareness that they might have when the leaders come will be interesting to see. But yeah, the bump drafting down the back straight, that is definitely something maybe a little bit risky. But these guys are professionals; they've been a long time in sim racing, so they know what they're doing.
And we've got 20 minutes to say, all come onto pit road. The top 3 guys are coming onto pit road with half an hour pretty much of this race scored complete. So Kroenke is in, Borcher is in, and Jorn Jens is onto pit road as well, Dan. This is that time where Jorn Jens, if he wants to get past Borcher and Kroenke, best chance for him to do it.
A single error from any of these drivers, if they enter their pit boxes wrong or have a slight delay, we'll see them drop back. This is the positions where Kroenke, Bocher and Jens, but these pit stops could change that order drastically depending on if they have any problems in the pits. At the moment, I don't think any of them have had any major issues. They all seem to get into their pit box very well. They weren't under too much pressure. They had 17 seconds back to the next driver, and Bocher and Kroenke, and I think, and in fact, Jorn Jens has had a bit of a struggle in the pits. He's fallen right back behind the draft even. So Martin Kroenke and Andrzej Bocher are the big winners from this. And the other cars they were racing, Alexander Trowbridge and David Hoyse, have fallen back a bit further, but our battle for 3 looks like a battle for 2 now, because Jorn Jens, as I said before, a mistake in the pit stop would be crucial, and Jorn Jens has lost a lot of time, so it looks like now we're looking at a 2-way battle at the moment, at least, between Martin Kroenke and Andrzej Bocher. There's a slower car there they had to navigate. That was a bit of tense there, but they got past him safely.
But looking at the pit in times, it does look as though that he was longer in his box due to the fact he took more fuel than those 2 drivers ahead of them. We don't expect fuel to be an issue here at all, but that cost him a lot of time there, not telling the fact that, hey, I need to get going. But, as you say, it's now a 2-horse race, and for Jorn Jens, it's going to be pretty low in the race now, because of the fact that he was about 12 seconds ahead of that pack that was running from 4. So Kroenke is still leading the way from Borcher, then Jens and Stam, and then Alexander Trowbridge round out your top 5. Having a look down, we've got a position right now going on between Mercat and McCormack. These 2 have been battling pretty much since the drop of the green flag. They are battling right now for 9th and 10th position on the racetrack, and not much to choose between these battles right now. And McCormack and Mears are very closely separated as they work themselves out of these the last couple of corners on the racetrack. And looks actually McCormack has dropped himself back that last lap, and that's going to cost him big time, because he was right there with about a tenth of a second of Meerkat as they came past the line last time by. Ahead of them, you've got Philip Stam and Paul Greedo, Jan Nisolowski recovering, and David Hoyse. They were really closely matched down.
McCormick and Meerkat have been together most of the race. You saw earlier they were battling side by side, fierce racing, and they're still together. But as you said before, Jan Nisolowski, though, I think is yet to make his compulsory pit stop. We saw him coming early for damage, but I don't think Jan Nisolowski's made his mandatory pit stop yet, so I think he'll fall a bit further down. But the battle behind between Grillo and Stam, they're side by side going down the straight, so as they come down now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think Grillo is just about going to keep the position. In fact, it wasn't Stam, it was the tail end of my mistakes. But yeah, as I said before, I think Jan Nisolowski still has a pit stop to make.
Indeed. To run through the guys who have currently scored laps and out of the race, you have Radu Hamaranchi, who's just actually brought his car back into pit road there. He had a spin down at the final corner. Scored 1 lap down. Brendan O'Brien, Peter Joyce, Timothy Hopper, Christian Manzini, Jesse Pakatura, Morgan Nielsen, Marco Connell, Jan Durex and Michael Carr all scored 1 lap down. And you have Pierre Bourdon, Thiago Almeida, Richard Avery, and Kevin McDonald scored multiple laps down and out of the race. Which is interesting, because we are at that point now where lap traffic, as you talked about, will come into play. And I'm having a look at John Unsbury, actually. He has Henry Hantila and Chris Martin ahead of him. They are side by side, and he's got the speed to try and make that 3 wide, but we're still a little bit too wide to try and do something a little bit that dangerous, Dan.
Yeah, the car in front of him has gone well wide there. He's going to get a ticket to come back in. It goes bouncing across the grass. And that was actually quite a bit spectacular there. That was the car of, was it Chris Martin? No, I don't think it was Chris Martin. In fact, it was Harry Antila. So Harry Antila, who was actually battling with John Unsbury, went very, very wide into the corner. And as a result, he very, very nearly lost the position there, did Harry Antila. But as we were looking before, the battle between the number 10 of Jan Merkat, and there's a spinner there as well in the carousel I've seen. There's a yellow and blue car which is in the middle of the track, so bit of a hairy stuff there. We don't want someone spinning in the middle of the carousel, that's for sure.
Now, the worst place to ever have your car spinning is down at the carousel, and that was Morgan's and Nelson there who lost it. Unfortunately, he's been able to bring his car back onto the racetrack. In fact, Nelson actually went wide because there's a secondary spinner there as well. It was just ahead of him, and that was, let's see, yeah, you're right, it's Jesse Pactura there, who actually did just about catch Nielsen. So Nielsen's going to have a little bit of damage. He's going to have to bring that car back down to pit road, Dan.
Yeah, have to get some damage, but as you remember, they got the 2 free toes, and so that will help the cause. But yeah, Meerkat's very, very similar to what we saw earlier in Andrew Butcher coming into turn 6, that left-hander before the end, getting the tail out, near enough going on the grass there, but he just managed to hold on to it. Very good driving from him, and he keeps his position over Mike McCormick, but McCormick now is right under his rear wing, so I think Mike McCormick will be trying to make a move as they come down the carousel this time. He pulls out already, very early he's pulled out there, so he's going to try and make it round the outside, but without the draft he could find it a bit difficult.
Yeah, and we've got about 15 minutes left of this race to go here from Watkins Glen. It's been a fascinating battle. In that battle for the race lead, Dan, you've had Martin Kroenke, Andre Borcher, Jorn Jens pretty much going the entire way. And then Jorn Jens, he lost himself a ton of time in his pit stoppers. And Morgan Nielsen just reversing his car on pit road. I tell you what, he's going to always run over another car. And in fact, he's going to get himself disqualified if he's not careful. In fact, he has now got disqualified from this race because he went too far back on pit road. But for Kroenke and Borcher, those two have still got a chance to win. But Jens is...
Yeah, Jorn Jens is a long way back there, and Martin Kroenke and Martin Borcher at the moment, it is a two-way race. Jorn Jens has dropped back to 6 seconds. He's a bit of a no man's land, really, because he's got a similar gap to the car in 4th position, which is Alexander Trowbridge. But he's got David Hesse in 5th place, and Yannis Alaska, I'm not sure if he does have to make a pit stop or not, but he's in 6th position, 24 seconds back. He'll be trying to catch up to Hesse and Trowbridge before the end, but I think time will run out for him. But at the moment we have Martin Kroenke in the lead with Andre Borcher in 2nd place. They're very tight together as they come down what is probably known here as the back straight as they go in towards turn 6. There's a slower car in front of them, and that slower car is the car of Marcus Internem. But now we're looking at the 9th position car of Mike McCormick. He's been in that battle with Jan Merkatz, and he's going to go around the outside of Mike McCormick after a few laps of trying. I think it's just about he's made it stick going into the carousel. And as they come down onto the back straight there, well, Merkatz is still right behind him. So this is something that these two drivers have been battling this close for the whole race. So with that being said, it'd be hard for him probably to shake him off. But you've got Merkatz on the outside, McCormick on the inside. But that means McCormick's going to be tighter going into the second part of the corner, which he is. And as a result, Merkatz has got a run on him. But Merkatz on the outside. But once again, McCormick takes the inside and manages to keep the position. But these two fighting out very hard, but they got to be careful because not far behind them is Mikko Nassi, who's in that 10th position. We know how fast Mikko Nassi can be. So they're going to have to be very, very careful because if they're slowing each other down, Mikko Nassi will be able to find a way through. There's only one car separating Mikko Nassi from them, and that is a slower car in front of him, and that is the car of Peter Joyce, who's currently running in 30th, 1 lap down. And the battle for that battle is still going on between McCormick and Merkatz. McCormick has got come through the S's, but as we know with the draft, Merkatz will be coming up behind him. So as they go down to the straight now, McCormick's on the inside, but Merkatz no doubt will come out to the outside. And as I say that, he does come out to the outside now. So yeah, Merkatz on the outside of Mike McCormick. This is battle for 8th and 9th position. Merkatz is going to try and make it round the outside, but it's going to be a struggle for him to do it because McCormick has got the line, and with him, even him being on the outside, it means he's on a tighter entry to the carousel, and McCormick has got free enough that I don't think he's going to have to defend going into 10-6 either because Merkatz is too far behind him. But Mikko Nassi's just going past that slower car now, Peter Joyce, so by the time they get round to the straight on the next lap, we could well see Mikko Nassi on the back of these two drivers. But up front still, it's Martin Kroenke in the lead from Andre Borcher. They two, I mean, they're almost in stationary at the moment. Don't think they're really fighting each other much at the moment. They've got a 7.2 second lead back to Jorn Jens, and that last lap, Jorn Jens was 0.3 slower than Andre Borcher. Andre Borcher with a 1:23.834, and Jorn Jens at a 1:24.1. So Jorn Jens on his own is struggling out there a bit, and he's really in a no man's land because the cars behind him, Alexander Trowbridge and David Hosey. They're racing for 4th place as well. They're side by side as they come to the carousel. A very similar situation to what we saw with McCormick and Mercatz, but Hosey on the inside. He's going to take that position for the moment from Alexander Trowbridge. So David Hosey, who was in 4th place for the majority of this race before his pit stop, has taken that position back from him. So that's Hosey up into 4th place with Trowbridge now down to 5th. But Hosey is probably too far back now of Jorn Jens. He's got 5 seconds to go to catch him up. We've only got 10 minutes left in this race. But further back, we're just looking again at Mike McCormick again, and Mercatz on the outside. But this time, he's got the momentum coming down the back straight, and Mercatz will have the inside line. But as I said before, Mikko Nassi is right behind the pair of them. Mercatz is he going to try and take move? I thought he was going to back in there for a second, but instead he is going to try and go around the outside and force McCormick wide. There's a spinner also there, and McCormick's on the grass. McCormick just about to keep it on track, and Mercatz though on the outside. This is good racing between these two side by side, and they're about to keep it in. And going into the pits is Mikko Nassi. So Mikko Nassi, who had problems earlier in the race, I don't think has taken his mandatory pit stop. So that'll be his pit stop. But that battle is still. They're still side by side going into turn 1 with McCormick on the inside, and they're very, very close there. And going out very wide was the car there. Mercatz using the turn 1 escape road to its maximum potential. He's going to try and use that momentum to go around the outside. He's got the inside for the S's, and he's going to try and keep the position. But McCormick will have he's going to try and cut back, because McCormick will get the draft and try and get him back down the carousel. But these two drivers are fighting hammer and tongue. There's a car off in front of him. I think that's a number 29 car. It's a yellow and black car, which I saw there. It's Christian Manzini, is it? Yeah, Christian Manzini. So Christian Manzini in trouble there, and it nearly could have affected the two cars were battling for position, but it didn't affect them. But Mercatz was managed that time to keep the position over McCormick in the carousel. So those two are unchanged. It's Mercatz in 8th and McCormick in 9th. And that's probably one of the best battles we've got on track at the moment. But then we've also got a couple battles further down. We got a 3-way battle for 13th, 14th and 15th. We got Edward Cavalier and Glenn Childer on this lap. They both managed to find a way past John Unsby. When they crossed the line at the start of the lap, Unsby was ahead. But at the moment, it looks like the car of Cavalier leading Childer. So Cavalier has got him to 13th place, Childer is 14th, and Unsby is in 15th place. So there's quite a few little battles going on around the track at the moment. But unfortunately for the lead at the moment, we've only got 2 cars, and that's Martin Kroenke and Andre Bocher. They seem quite stationary, so our apologies if we're not seeing much of them on screen. That's because there really isn't much going on there. The main battles we've got for 4th and 5th, and we've also got one for 8th and 9th, and that battle for 4th and 5th is carrying on again. Trowbridge this time on the outside. He's going to make it stick before the carousel. So Alexander Trowbridge takes that 4th position back, which David Hosey took from him a couple of laps ago. And if I look further back here, see what's going on in that battle between Mercatz and McCormick, and they're also in a similar position where they're racing side by side down the straight, and McCormick is on the outside. We got the car of Mercatz on the inside, and McCormick's going to try and do exactly what we saw Alexander Trowbridge just do. A bit more defensive there from Mercatz. He tried to brake as late as possible, but he couldn't keep him behind, so McCormick has gone past again, but it'll only be a matter of time before they switch places again. This is fantastic racing. This is really like Formula Ford racing, for any of you who've seen that in Europe. Formula Ford racing, very close, they're switching positions a lot, and this is exactly what we've got in store here. We've got about 6 minutes left of this race to go, and at the moment it is Martin Kroenke leading by 2 tenths to Andre Bocher. Their teammate Jorn Jens is in 3rd place, 7.8 seconds back. Then there's another 7 seconds back to a battle for 4th position between Alexander Trowbridge and David Hosey. In 5th position we have Philip Stam, and 6th is Jan Nizolowski. And then there's this battle which we've been talking about now, and down the inside goes Mercatz into turn 1 on McCormick again, and Mercatz, as I said before, would try and take that position back, and he has done so, but he's gone a little bit wide again going out of turn 1, but he's going to keep the position. But those two have got quite a gap back to Harry and Tito in 10th position. Then there's that battle I was telling you earlier about with Glenn Childer and Edward Cavalier, and they've actually dropped John Unsby now. John Unsby at one stage was right up with these two drivers, but he's fallen back, so it's Cavalier in 13th, and no, my apologies, Childer's 12th and Cavalier in 13th. The other two are running quite close together on the track at the moment. We talked about Mikko Nassi earlier, who's taken a pit stop, and Mikko Nassi has come out in 16th place, and Mikko Nassi, who won the World Tour event in the IndyCar last season at Mid-Ohio. So Mikko Nassi, a very, very fast driver in his own right. He's down in 16th position. He struggled earlier on with an incident, but he's managed to get back into the race, and he's He's a minute and 2 seconds behind the leader, but his next target is Latko Sinovic, who is 3 seconds in front of him. So by the end of the race, Mikko Nassi could quite possibly get himself up into 15th place, but with only less than 5 minutes to go, I think it'd be very hard pushed to catch John Ensby, who's a further 3 seconds down the road. But that battle down the back straight between Kroenke and Boucher, well, it's not really a battle. It seems like they're quite happy to follow each other at the moment. So as they come down into the carousel, it's Martin Kroenke leading from Andrzej Boucher, and they haven't changed positions now for quite a few laps really. But I think towards the end of the race, we'll see the move. Andrzej Boucher will try and get past Martin Kroenke. It's a bit really like like some of the races you see on these super speedways in America, like Daytona, where it might not necessarily be best to be in the lead in that last lap because the cars behind us a bit of an advantage. Well, I have quite a bit of an advantage over you in terms of the draft, and you can end up being a sitting duck. So that's something that Martin Kroenke will try to avoid, but I think it will now be inevitable that he will get past near the end of the race. But David Hussey and Alexander Trowbridge is in that battle for 4th position that we saw earlier, and David Hussey's gone past him again. So it's Hussey 4th, Trowbridge 5th, and they're quite a bit behind Jorn Jens at the moment. So that's the only real battle those two drivers have got to think about. It's a battle for 4th and 5th, but Trowbridge is going to try and get around the outside, which should be a good move if he can make it stick, but he's just going to stick behind at the moment and try and get the draft to get the move done by the carousel. But these two drivers have been racing very well. They've been very close together right from the beginning of the race. And if any of you missed the beginning of the race, we had a 9-car train, including drivers such as Jan Nisolowski, we had Almeida, we had Jorn Jens, Andrzej Boucher, Martin Kroenke. There's a couple of unfortunate incidents which broke that train up, and it turned into a 5-car train with Andrzej Boucher, Martin Kroenke, Jorn Jens, David Hussey, and Alexander Trowbridge. And the three drivers from My3ID Gaming, Martin Kroenke, Andrzej Boucher, and Jorn Jens, pulled away from Alexander Trowbridge and David Hussey, and that's a situation which really has been developing through the race, was the three My3ID drivers, and there's a spinner there into the wall, so going into the carousel. And who was that who went flying? It was Bobby West. So Bobby West, who was in 20th position, has gone off, and as Andrzej Boucher is going into the pit lane, I don't know what's happened there, but Andrzej Boucher is heading down to pit lane. That's very, very interesting. Now, let's see what happened before then. We saw that can't see any damage on the car of Andrzej Boucher. We said before about, was there maybe, oh, there's an instant between the two of them, that's what's happened. What happened is Martin Kroenke's had a slide going out of turn 6, and he's T-boned his teammate Andrzej Boucher. Quite extraordinary stuff there. These two drivers were on their own. There's nothing really happening, and I think Andrzej Boucher, in fact, has had damage from Martin Kroenke coming across and hitting him. So what I believe has happened there is Andrzej Boucher is the unfortunate victim of a meatball flag. So he's going to come into the pits, and now what you got to wonder is, what damage has been done to that car? Martin Kroenke, who's leading, because it was quite a hard impact to the side of Andrzej Boucher. What happened there was they were coming out into turn 6, which is a left-hander before the final corner, and Kroenke on his own, there was no help. Earlier in the race we saw that's where Jan Nisolowski came off with some help, but Martin Kroenke had no help whatsoever. He just got loose into the corner, and his teammate Andrzej Boucher was so close to him behind that he didn't have much time at all to react. He just hit him, unfortunately, and Martin Kroenke seems to be a little bit slower than he was before. There's a car behind him, which is the car of Timothy Hopper, and Timothy Hopper is not falling back as much as you would think. That's Timothy Hopper's right down the field. He's in 31st position. So I'm going to have a look here at Martin Kroenke's lap times just to see how much slower they are, because Jorn Jens is not a million miles apart. He was 6.8 seconds back at the start of the lap. We've got 3 minutes to go, and that gap between Jorn Jens and Martin Kroenke is down to 5.1 seconds, so we could have a bit of a grandstand finish here depending on Martin Kroenke's damage, because Jorn Jens could snatch it. We've only got 3 minutes to go, so about 2 laps, but depending on how much damage Kroenke has and how much time he loses, this could be a very much a grandstand finish, because we've got a 125.2 for Kroenke and a 123.5 for Jorn Jens. We're now looking about for 7th position, which is the Mercats and McCormick scrap, and McCormick is back in front, and Mercats is coming into the pits. So yeah, Mercats I think maybe a little bit short on fuel, and unfortunately that's broken up one of our main battles on the track. Yeah, Mercats coming into the pit, so Mike McCormick has been released, and that'll be a sigh of relief here for Mike McCormick, because Mike McCormick was under fierce pressure for the whole race, and in fact he spun on turn 1, so Mike McCormick, now the pressure's off him, he's made a mistake, but he had quite a bit of time before the car behind him, which was Chris Martin. But Chris Martin has now gone past, and also Harry Antila. So Mike McCormick, very weird that was, because he'd been racing there with the car of Mercatz, and Mercatz has gone into the pits. He finds he makes a mistake going into the first corner, almost as if he relaxed a little bit too much there, and it's cost him 2 positions with Chris Martin in the number 142 and the number 19 of Harry Antila coming past him. And that battle for what was 4th before is now into 3rd position, and Alexander Trowbridge has got past David Hussey. David Hussey is very slow. He's coming to the pits as well, what it looks like. Andre Bocher is recovering, and Andre Bocher is just behind, and indeed that is a pit stop for David Hussey as well. So a few of these cars have been really struggling, I think, with their fuel mileage. They put just that little bit too short of fuel in, and we're looking at the gap between Kroenke and Jorn Jens. It's come down by another second, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough for Jorn Jens. He's not going to have enough time. Jorn Jens' last lap, a 1:24.011. His teammate Martin Kroenke, 1:25.0. Unfortunately for Jorn Jens, that mistake in the pit lane, or taking extra fuel, looks like it could have cost him, but we never know what sort of fuel Martin Kroenke and Andre Bocher were on. Did they leave it maybe a bit tight for fuel? Be interesting to see this last lap or so, and if Kroenke does slow down, because Jorn Jens appears to take a little bit more fuel. But as they come around, they'll get the white flag this time by. And we said before about the slow car behind not being able to get the distance, and he's still behind him, the time of Timothy Hopper. So Martin Kroenke definitely in trouble, and Jorn Jens is very visibly getting even closer to our leader Martin Kroenke. So by the time they get across the line this time, it could be about 3.5 to 4 seconds, but it's going to be even less than that. It was 4 seconds last time round. But I think he might just be 1 lap too much. But knowing Jorn Jens, he will have his foot firmly on the accelerator pedal. He will know that Martin Kroenke may be struggling a little bit just by the times they put in. And this time, he's 2.6 behind. So if Jorn Jens can get the draft behind of Timothy Hopper, now that car of Timothy Hopper could prove. But Jorn Jens has gone very wide into turn 1 now and lost himself maybe a couple of tenths there. But if he could have caught up to the car of Hopper and got the draft, it could have been a different story. But I think Jorn Jens going slightly wide there into turn 1 has maybe blown his chances, because he's got about half a lap to go, and Martin Kroenke does look set to take the victory here, unless there's a very late dramatic climax to this race, them losing fuel or something. Andre Bocher, despite the problem, and there's a crash between Alexander Trowbridge. In fact, Alexander Trowbridge is coming into the pits now, so Alexander Trowbridge is short on fuel as well. There was a crash though as well, and the crash was between Chowder and Trowbridge there, so unfortunately those 2 cars were on separate laps near enough. Glenn Chowder was in 17th place. But as we come now towards the last corner, it's Martin Kroenke in the lead, and Jorn Jens, if it has 1 more lap, I think Jorn Jens will have taken victory. But Martin Kroenke is very, very lucky that the incident with Andre Bocher happened at such a late stage, because he comes around turn 7 now, and the My3ID gaming driver is 1 corner away. He takes the corner now. Jorn Jens very close to that barrier, he's fully committed, but no, it's not going to be denying Martin Kroenke. Martin Kroenke comes across the line to take victory in his week 13 skip Barber race by just 0.8 of a second to Jorn Jens. Very, very close there at the end. Andre Bocher will come across the line to take 3rd place. We've got a battle here on the track for 5th position between Philip Stam's going to take this 5th position. Behind him, he's got David Hussey in 6th position. Alexander Trowbridge, who was in 4th position, is not going to be in 4th because he lost time with that pit stop at the end. So Philip Stam will come across to take 4th position. David Hussey looks like he's going to take 5th, but there was a car there. Some cars in front of him battling very hard indeed. And in fact, it's Alexander Trowbridge. So Alexander Trowbridge will finish in 5th position with David Hussey in 6th position. Both of them had to pit near the end of the race, which cost them time, but it's Trowbridge takes 5th, Hussey in 6th position. In 7th place is Harry. In fact, it's not going to be Harry Antila, it's going to be Jan Nisolowski. So Jan Nisolowski, a very brave fight back from him. He had trouble earlier on in this race, and he's come back to finish in 7th position. 8th is Harry Antila, very close between 8th and 9th, because Edward Cavalier was not far behind him. And another person who had adversity earlier in the race, that's Miko Nassi, took 10th position, with Ian Bevan 11th, and that's a good fight back as well from Ian Bevan. Ian Bevan was very unlucky at the start of the race. He missed the start due to a connection issue, had to start right from the pit lane after starting the race. He should have started in 4th position, but he comes back to 11th. In 12th position is John O'Day, 13th is Jan Mercatz, 14th Dominic Brennan, 15th John Gilmore. Those are the 15 cars who finished on the lead lap. But so victory in this Week 13 Skip Barber race for My 3ID's Martin Kroenke. In second position was Jorn Jens, and rounding out on My 3ID podium was Andrzej Bocha. In fourth position is Philip Stam, 15th is Alexander Trowbridge, 6th was David Hussey, 7th Jan Nizolowski, 8th is Harry Antila, 9th Edward Cavalier, in 10th position is Miko Nassi running out of top 10, 11th is Ian Bevan, in 12th position John O'Day, 13th is Jan V. Mercat, 14th is Dominic Brennan, 15th is John Gilmore with Chris Martin in 16th place. In 17th is Kevin Vaughan, 18th was Zatko Nisevic, 19th was Marcus Interden, and rounding out the top 20 was John Unsby. So that has been 15 minutes of fierce racing in the Skip Barber. It was really, really thrilling racing and lots of side-by-side action. We had some really good battles throughout the race. The story of the race really was we had a 9-car train at the start of the race, which pulled away. There was 2 packs which got split up, but eventually there was trouble for the leading pack with 4 of them coming in to bother, which left a train of 5 cars. Martin Kroenke, Jorn Jens, Andrzej Bocha, Alexander Trowbridge, and David Hussey. The 3 My 3ID drivers pulled away, and they came into the pits 1, 2, 3, but Jorn Jens in the pit stop had a bit of a struggle. He took extra time in the pits, and it dropped him back from Kroenke and Bocha, who were drafting together. So Jorn Jens was really in no man's land. Martin Kroenke and Andrzej Bocha were fighting together. They weren't exactly fighting. It was almost as if they were in line. They were doing a bit of a multi-21. They were holding position, but they're not far from the end. Martin Kroenke made a mistake coming out of turn 6. The car got loose, and Andrzej Bocha was not far behind him. And Martin Kroenke collected Andrzej Bocha. Andrzej Bocha had to go in the pits to serve a meatball penalty, unfortunately for him, which ruined any chances he had a lead. Martin Kroenke bravely kept on fighting. He had visible damage, and Jorn Jens' teammate very, very close. It was 6 seconds with 3 laps to go, and by the end of the race, Jorn Jens just 8 tenths behind Martin Kroenke. So for Jorn Jens, it was a case of 1 lap, 2 less. There was 1 more lap for this race. Jorn Jens would be the man who took the victory, but it was Martin Kroenke, the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix driver, who took victory with his Pro Series teammate Jorn Jensen with the pro driver Jorn Jensen second, his Maestro ID teammate, and Andrzej Bocha in third, rounding out the podium. So it's been a very, very good race from the Skip Barbers. Especially now we've had the new tyre model for the Skip Barber. The car has become, quite a lot of people have said it's a lot more drivable and it's a lot more fun. And you've got to say that the proof is in the pudding as such. These drivers really have put a great show on for us today. And that has been it's been a really fantastic racing display. We saw battles all through the field, and the main battles were mostly, we saw that battle as well between the number 10 car. That was quite a thrilling battle with the Mercats and McCormick. But at the end, it's been Martin Kroenke who takes victory. For me, Dan Blake, Will Vincent, and Yoni Batman, it's a huge thank you for watching this broadcast, and thank you for Yoni for his work being the director. And we'll see you next time on GlacierTV tomorrow for IndyCars.